men's basketball head coach Crutchfield is going to be sticking around a little bit longer. After leading the Mavericks to a historic season, Omaha announced today Crutchfield has agreed to a contract extension through April of 2030. In just his third year at the helm, Crutchfield led the Mavs to new heights. Omaha captured its first Summit League regular season and tournament titles, along with making the program's March Madness debut against second-seeded St. John's. Crutchfield, a former Mavs football and basketball player himself, earned Summit League Coach of the Year after guiding Omaha to a program record 22 wins. While his new salary has yet to be released, in Crutchfield's original contract from 2022, he received $275,000 in base salary, along with $45,000 incentives for Summit League titles and Conference Coach of the Year, both of which he got.